Iran's secret alliances have activated, what happens next will shock the world. In a world drowning in noise, where truth is buried beneath headlines and hearts are distracted by comfort, a storm is silently gathering. A movement is unfolding, not in boardrooms or press conferences, but in the deserts, the mountains, the sacred streets where sacrifice still has meaning. This isn't just politics. This isn't just power. This is a divine script playing out before our eyes. For too long, the oppressed cried in silence, the believers were tested, and the arrogant ruled with impunity. But Allah is never absent. He sees, He waits, and when the time is right, He moves. What you are about to witness is not just information, it's revelation. The rise of alliances long hidden, the awakening of a resistance built through faith, and the trembling of an empire that thought it could never fall. Open your heart, open your eyes. What comes next will not only shake nations, it will test souls. Stay with me until the very end, because the truth that awaits you may just change how you see the world forever. Iran has long been portrayed in global media as a nation isolated, sanctioned, and politically cornered. But this narrative hides a deeper truth, one that now reveals itself in powerful and divine patterns unfolding across the region. While the world looked elsewhere, Iran was weaving a web of relationships grounded in shared resistance, ideological alignment, and a vision of independence from Western domination. These alliances were not signed in conference halls or broadcast on international news. They were nurtured in quiet meetings, sacred bonds, and common struggles. They were built not just with nations, but with movements. Movements that share a spiritual and political mission to resist oppression and restore dignity to their people. Iran's strategic partnerships with countries like Russia and China, and with non-stable actors such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and various groups in Iraq and Syria, are not just political. They are deeply rooted in a shared belief that Western imperialism has long desecrated the sovereignty and faith of nations. These alliances have been forming like pieces of a larger puzzle, hidden but purposeful. Each connection is more than military cooperation. It is an oath against tyranny, a sacred pact among those who have been bombed, sanctioned, demonized, and yet they endure. While many believed Iran stood alone, it was in fact forming a silent congregation of the resistant, a brotherhood of the steadfast. This alliance is not without divine symbolism. The Holy Quran speaks of standing firm against oppression, of rising against the tyrant, of siding with the oppressed, even if they are few. Iran's alliances represent a modern reflection of this principle. The Prophet, EBBUO, never stood alone. He built alliances in Medina. He inspired the Ansar, and he found strength not only in numbers, but in belief. In similar fashion, Iran's alignment with regional resistance groups carries an echo of this historical strategy. Their unity is not just military, it is spiritual, cultural, and civilizational. For decades, Iran was surrounded by threats, yet never collapsed. Its endurance is seen by many as a sign of divine protection, a test of patience, and a reward for resistance. The growing connections with Eastern powers and local movements are not born out of desperation, but vision. A vision where the Muslim world is no longer subjugated by foreign armies, foreign currencies, or foreign values. Instead, these alliances aim to reclaim sovereignty over not just land, but identity, culture, and belief. While the West continues to rely on visible strength, fleets, sanctions, bases, Iran is focused on hidden strength. The strength of faith-based unity, the strength of asymmetric power, the strength of an idea that dignity cannot be bought and submission to injustice is worse than death. These quiet alliances are now activating, rising like a tide that cannot be held back. The faithful will recognize the signs, the patient will understand the wisdom, and those who see with the eyes of history will not be surprised by what is now unfolding. While many focus on the visible confrontations in the Middle East, a deeper transformation was taking place, one that reflects the age-old principle of preparing silently before striking with strength and clarity. Iran has not merely relied on its own resources, it has built a powerful system of economic and military cooperation that defies the worldly empires who seek to dominate through fear, currency, and brute force. These partnerships are not accidental. They are calculated, deliberate, and to many believers, divinely guided. Iran's relationship with powerful nations like Russia and China is not only about politics. It is about resisting a global order that for decades has humiliated Muslim lands, robbed them of their wealth, and dictated their future. In recent years, Iran has signed sweeping economic agreements with China, trading oil for infrastructure, technology, and long-term investment. These agreements are built outside the reach of the US dollar, deliberately undermining the stranglehold of Western economic systems. This is a direct challenge to the global hegemony of powers that have weaponized their currencies, their banks, and their influence to crush any independent Muslim nation. From a spiritual lens, this act of economic resistance is not simply clever strategy. It is an act of self-respect, of refusing to bow before the modern pharaohs. The Quran warns believers about the traps of unjust rulers and oppressive systems. When a nation decides not to use the master's tools to build its future, it is choosing faith over fear. And Iran, despite decades of sanctions, has built a model of economic survival that inspires others who seek to break free. On the military front, Iran has moved beyond borders. With the help of allies and proxies, it has shared its knowledge of drone technology, missile defense, and cyber warfare with like-minded groups across the region. These are not merely weapons, they are shields for the oppressed, tools of resistance against armies with tanks and jets. Hezbollah in Lebanon now possesses missiles that can reach deep into Israeli territory. The Houthis in Yemen have struck at the heart of Saudi oil production. Iraq's militias stand as a warning to any foreign occupier. All of this, coordinated, empowered, and spiritually charged, flows from Iran's philosophy of regional defense. This growing network of cooperation is not random. It is unified by belief. Belief that sovereignty is sacred, belief that resistance is righteous, belief that no tyrant, no matter how powerful, is above accountability. The Quran tells us of the people of the cave, the companions of the trench, and the defenders of faith, those who stood firm in times of immense hardship. Today, the believers see in Elon's alliances a similar spirit of unwavering defiance. These military and economic pacts are forming an arc of resistance across the region. They aim not just to protect Iran, but to protect a way of life, a vision of the Muslim Ummah that is proud, dignified, and free from foreign chains. The power of these alliances does not only come from weapons or wealth, but from the purity of purpose, from patience, from sacrifice, and above all, from the belief that no empire lasts forever except the one ruled by justice, truth, and the will of the Almighty. For much of the modern age, the world has been dominated by a single narrative, a unipolar system where one nation dictates the rules, imposes sanctions, launches wars, and decides the fate of others with impunity. This structure, upheld by powerful Western states and their global institutions, has long served the interests of a few while suppressing the voices of the many, especially in the Muslim world. But history does not stand still, and neither does the divine plan. Today we witness the slow but certain rise of a multipolar world where power is shared, where no single empire can claim global authority, and where oppressed nations are finding new paths towards sovereignty and dignity. Iran's role in this transition is not accidental. It is central. While many Muslim-majority nations align themselves with the West, seeking security and wealth through submission, Iran charted a different course. It chose resistance over dependence. It rejected the imposed norms of a global system that has time and again betrayed its own values when dealing with Muslim lands. Through patience, suffering, and strategic alliances, Iran now finds itself as a key player in shaping a new world order, one that includes not only Russia and China, but also other emerging nations seeking freedom from American hegemony. This is not merely a political realignment, it is a spiritual awakening. The Quran reminds us that nations rise and fall by the will of Allah, and that no oppressor lasts forever. When the Pharaoh claimed lordship over Egypt, it was not through war alone that he was defeated, but through the collective prayer, perseverance, and unity of the oppressed. In a similar way, the unipolar world that has enabled countless invasions, drone strikes, economic strangulations, and cultural erasure is beginning to fracture, not through chaos, but through the wisdom of nations who remember their own worth. Iran's engagement with BRICS and other independent economic forums shows this clearly. These are platforms that challenge the dominance of the US dollar, that question the morality of Western-led wars, and that offer alternate visions of cooperation based on mutual respect. For the believer, this signals something deeper than politics. It signals the possibility of justice returning to the global stage, of systems being built not to exploit but to uplift, of a world where Muslims are not dictated to, but heard, honored, and allowed to live by their own values. The West has long presented itself as the beacon of civilization, yet its hands are stained with the blood of innocents across Iraq, Afghanistan, Palestine, and beyond. The rise of a multipolar world challenges this false moral high ground. It opens the door for believers to shape the future, not as subjects of empire, but as contributors to a balanced global community. Iran's position within this shift is not a coincidence. It is the result of decades of steadfastness, sacrifice, and reliance on divine guidance. It shows that even under the heaviest of pressures, a nation that clings to its values and trusts in Allah will not only survive, it will lead. Iran's influence in the region extends far beyond its borders, not through invasions or occupations, but through a network of allied groups and movements that share a unified vision rooted in resistance and faith. These are not puppet forces controlled by foreign agendas, but independent actors who have found strength in Iran's support. Militarily, ideologically, and spiritually, from Lebanon to Gaza, Iraq to Yemen, this network of regional influence is built not on greed or control, but on a shared mission to stand against oppression, to protect the dignity of their people, and to defend the sacred values that have been under threat for generations. Hezbollah in Lebanon is one of the most powerful symbols of this alliance. Born out of resistance against Israeli occupation, this movement has grown into a disciplined, battle-hardened force that serves not only as a military defense, but as a spiritual beacon for those who believe in standing firm for truth. Backed by Iranian knowledge, technology, and ideology, Hezbollah has successfully defended its land and its people against some of the most powerful armies in the world. Their victories are not only military, they are victories of belief, of patience, of unwavering trust in the promise that Allah supports the steadfast. In Yemen, the Houthi movement has similarly defied all odds. Facing a brutal war led by a coalition of wealthy and militarized states, the people of Yemen have suffered siege, famine, and relentless bombardment. And yet, through all of this, they have not surrendered. Iran's support for the Houthis has strengthened their ability to resist and, more importantly, to expose the hypocrisy of those who preach human rights while bombing civilians. For the religiously aware, this is a clear manifestation of the Quranic principle that Allah grants victory not to the strong in numbers or wealth, but to those who rely on Him with sincerity and purpose. Iraq and Syria have also become part of this arc of resistance. Iranian-backed groups in these lands have played a key role in defeating extremist forces like ISIS. Forces that were created, armed, or allowed to grow due to foreign interference and failed occupations. Iran's presence in these regions is not an act of conquest, but one of defense. Defense of holy sites, of innocent lives, and of regional stability. These militias, shaped by years of struggle and sacrifice, see Iran not as a master, but as a partner in a divinely inspired mission. This expanding influence, often described as the Shia Crescent, is deeply misunderstood by the Western world. It is not sectarianism that binds these groups, but a shared opposition to injustice, to foreign domination, and to the humiliation of the Muslim world. Their unity is a reminder of the early days of Islam, when small bands of believers faced overwhelming odds, yet prevailed through faith, discipline, and brotherhood. Iran's strategy is not just geopolitical, it is spiritual, prophetic, and reflective of a vision that many in the Ummah have longed for. One in which the oppressed rise with dignity, the weak find strength through unity, and the faithful become a shield for one another. The activation of Iran's secret alliances carries a weight that reaches far beyond politics or strategy. It shakes the foundation of global stability and awakens a deep spiritual alertness for those who reflect. What we are witnessing is not merely a series of diplomatic or military maneuvers. It is the unfolding of a divinely written reality where the oppressed gather, the patient are empowered, and the arrogant begin to tremble. For years, many thought Iran was bluffing, merely surviving under sanctions, encircled by enemies and weakened by pressure. But in truth, Iran was preparing, quietly, steadily, and with a clear sense of mission rooted in its religious identity and historical calling. Now, with alliances activated and the network of regional resistance fully awake, the world stands on the edge of a new chapter. The balance of power is shifting, and the cost of ignoring this change could be catastrophic. These alliances, long underestimated, now hold the potential to respond to any aggression with precision, with coordination, and with a level of sacrifice that no superpower can match. The resistance movements connected to Iran do not fear death, because their struggle is not for worldly gain. It is for justice, for liberation, and for the preservation of sacred lands and values. This makes them unlike any other force in the world. Their courage does not come from the size of their arsenal, but from the depth of their belief. If these alliances are provoked into open conflict, the results will not be limited to the borders of a single nation. Oil routes could be blocked, U.S. bases could be struck, allies of Israel could find themselves under siege, regional war could quickly become global confrontation. This is not an exaggeration, it is a reality that world leaders now speak of behind closed doors. And for the believing heart, these are signs, reminders from the unseen that no empire, no matter how proud, can rule forever without consequence. The Quran is filled with stories of nations who transgressed, who oppressed others, and who ignored the warnings until the decree of Allah came swiftly and without escape. Iran's alliances have been forged through hardship and sealed by blood. Every martyr from Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, Palestine, and Yemen adds another bond, another unbreakable thread to this fabric of resistance. And now, the enemies of truth sense it. They know this is not just about Iran, it is about a growing force that sees through the lies, that challenges the false idols of money, military power, and media control. It is about a people who remember Kabbalah, who carry the lessons of Ashur in their hearts, and who will never sell their faith for comfort or silence. What happens next could reshape the entire global order. But for the believer, this is not a time to fear, it is a time to prepare. To be clear in one's stance, to support justice wherever it rises, and to recognize that in every moment of chaos, the hand of the Almighty is present, guiding events not randomly, but with purpose, with wisdom, and with truth. The world stands on the edge of a storm not born from chaos, but from years of injustice, resistance, and unspoken truths finally rising. Iran's secret alliances are no longer hidden. They have awakened, and with them the hopes of the oppressed and the fears of the arrogant. What many thought was weakness has revealed itself as wisdom. What was dismissed as isolation was in fact preparation. And now a new era begins. An era shaped not by the loud voices of empires, but by the firm footsteps of those who walk with purpose, conviction, and divine guidance. To the believers, this is not merely a geopolitical event. It is a sign, a reminder that history is not written by tyrants alone, but by those who endure, who resist, and who place their trust in Allah above all else. Iran's rise through sacred alliances reflects the unchanging truth of the Quran, that the oppressor may seem mighty, but victory belongs to those who believe, who are patient, and who stand for justice even when the world turns against them. As these alliances reshape our world, may we find clarity in the confusion, courage in the struggle, and faith in the unseen. What comes next may shake the world, but it will also awaken it. Thank you for listening, reflecting, and standing with truth in a time of deception. May Allah grant you wisdom to see through the fog, strength to stand firm in trials, and a heart that always beats for justice. Good luck on your journey. May your voice be a light for the lost and your courage a shield for the weak. Stay steadfast, stay sincere. The future belongs to those who believe.